Hi there, and welcome back to the Formulaic Approach. Today we are going to quickly talk about energy and energy sources. Now, what is energy? Energy is the capacity to do work or ability to do work. Every activity that we engage in on a daily basis results in the expending of energy. Okay, we expend energy for most of these activities. For example, as I am teaching, I am using um, um, energy from the chemical energy, okay, and so from the food that I've eaten, okay, so that's chemical energy that I'm you know transforming. Okay, so energy actually undergoes transformation into different forms. So that tells you that we have different forms of energy. Okay, so for example, the mechanical action of my hand is a result of the energy that I am able to transform from the chemical energy in the food that I've eaten into mechanical energy of motion. Right now, so there are many other forms of energy. Mechanical energy is one form, and mechanical is further divided into two, the kinetic and potential energy. We also have the light energy. We have light energy. We have nuclear, electrical, chemical, sound, wind, tidal. Okay, that's the associated with wind and water and wave. Okay, so that's tidal energy. Okay, so we have many such types of forms of energy. All right, so but today we are basically going to be talking about the sources of energy, and they can be grouped into two. Now, this grouping is based upon their um, their their renewability. Okay, so we have renewable sources of energy and non-renewable. So we call them the conventional. They can also be called the conventional. The conventional sources of energy are the non-renewable sources of energy. And then we have the renewable sources, which are the non-conventional sources. Now, why are they called conventional sources? They are because of their long time of use. Okay, it's long term of use, longevity. So it's been a long time that it's been known to be used. Okay, so for example, coal has been used since the days of the Bible. So because of the longevity, they what are conventional. Okay, so another thing is that they exist. They exist naturally. They mostly exist naturally. So humans just discovered them, as in humans just not like we produce them per se. So we just discovered them. So and because of that, they are exhaustible. They are exhaustible. Okay, they are not things that we can use and regenerate so that's why I say they are non-renewable. We cannot renew them. We cannot bring them back again. What we have used, if we have used it, it is gone. Do you understand now? All right, so those are the characteristics of the conventional sources of energy. Now examples. Now let's give some examples. Now we have coal, for example. So coal is a solid fossil fuel. Okay, a solid fossil fuel. Now, fossil fuels are generally formed um, underneath the earth crust, and it takes millions of years. Okay, so another thing is that it's a length of formation. The of formation, length of formation period is very long. Okay, its length of formation period is long. So because of that, it is also classified as conventional. So coal is one of the fossil fuels. Okay, and it takes millions of years, for example, to form. Do you understand? It takes very long period, as long as millions of years. Okay. Now we basically use it in thermal plants to generate electricity. It is used in thermal plants to generate electricity. All right, but it has a major disadvantage. So look at the way I'm going to be taking. I will just discuss briefly, and then I'll tell you the use and then the disadvantage. The major disadvantage of this guy is that it causes air pollution. It causes air pollution. That's one major thing that has been described with with coal, with the use of coal, air pollution. Now you see, another problem is in the mining of coal, okay? Another problem is fire outbreaks or explosion, okay? So for example, methane is a gas and that explodes in coal mines, okay? So it causes explosion in coal mines, so that's one of the hazards, okay? So it also has, so the environmental impact is air pollution and which other one would that be now? Mainly environmental, basically air pollution, okay, and during the process of mining it can cause explosion, okay, mining hazards, okay. So another one is we can also talk about petroleum itself, petroleum and natural gas, okay. Okay, so our PNG is produced here, all right, and this one is used for producing our LPG, okay, our LPGs. And now you see petroleum, the word petrol, if you have not seen my video on petrol on alkanes, I have talked about the process of even refining through fractional distillation, so make sure you see that video. Now, petroleum is from the word petra, which means rock, oleum, which means oil. Okay, so it means it is gotten underneath this thing is a liquid fossil fuel. Okay, is a liquid fossil fuel. Now, this guy is used in generation of our LPGs, kerosenes, diesels, gasoline, etc. Do you understand? So now, what do we use it for? Just like this one is used for electricity in thermal plants. We use petroleum for operating our automobiles, our cars, our vehicles, okay? Petrol is used for it. So now what's the major disadvantage? It also has a disadvantage of air pollution, okay? And okay, and it is used in disadvantage. It has a disadvantage of air pollution. It also has a disadvantage of increasing carbon footprint, also increasing carbon emissions, okay, CO2 emission, CO2 and CO emissions through burning, okay, smoke, okay, smoke. So CO, carbon monoxide, which is which is dangerous, carbon monoxide, not just to human, but also it depletes ozone layer, right? It depletes the ozone layer. Okay, so it aids CO2 emissions, and of course sulfur emissions too, also aids sulfur emissions. Okay, so that's why in power plants they experience phenomenon of fog. Okay, so natural gas is also they have the same problem, even though this one is mostly used for cooking. No, it's mostly for cooking. This one is mostly used for our automobiles, our vehicles. Okay. Another problem natural gas might have is also during the process of its production, of its mining, okay, and it can also increase carbon monoxide emissions. So all these ones that have to do with this, you see that they are associated with air pollution. So those are their disadvantages. Now another one we might want to consider is hydropower energy. That's another energy source, hydropower energy. Now, what's hydropower energy? Hydropower energy is just energy, electricity that is generated from using turbines, right? Turbines that are mounted in dams through the waterfall, through the potential energy of the water that falls from waterfall into the dam. Okay, that's the system. That's the way the system runs. So the turbines operate. I've explained this before in electromagnetism, how electricity is generated. So maybe you should see that video in order to understand this. So, at the end of the day, the electricity is generated, and after the generate, so as the turbine is spinning, then there's electricity generated. It gives you clean electricity, okay? In fact, better electricity than coal, okay? So it gives you clean electricity. But the problem with it is that it can lead to loss of biodiversity, because most water that are used or converted into dams are waters that, organisms are already existing in them. So it can lead to loss or reduction of biodiversity. Maybe not total loss, okay? Biodiversity just simply means different types of life forms in a particular ecosystem. So in this case, there's going to be reduction of biodiversity or displacement of even the human settlement, okay? Because sometimes in order to construct dams, okay, the place, it might require to take more land than required, more space than required. So sometimes the human settlements there are also what? Displaced. You understand? So it can also lead to what? Displacement of human settlement. Human settlement. Now, so that is one other disadvantage that it has, okay? Another one is another energy. So we have talked about coal, we've talked about petroleum, we've not talked about wood. So wood fuel, wood energy, okay, is also, through wood fuel, okay? So that's why I'm calling wood energy, through wood fuel. This one is very cheap. Now, one of the things that characterizes a good source of energy, I didn't mention that, I'm sorry, is that it has to be cheap, okay? A good source of energy has to be cheap. So X sticks of good source of energy. Good energy source is that a good energy source has to be cheap. What does cheap mean? It means that economically available, okay? Economically you can is economically available, or you can afford it, economically affordable, okay? So it is cheap, it is readily available also. Readily available is different from cheapness, okay? Readily available means cheapness in terms of finance, economically. Readily available is in terms of its availability. So that is it's not something that will be available for a period and then after a while it will no longer be available. That's why conventional sources of energy are not very reliable. Another characteristic that a good source of energy must have is its I've talked about energy availability and longevity of use. It should be available, it should be able to be used for a long period of time and be efficient. Now, in terms of efficiency, what do I mean? That is, you should give a lot of energy per unit mass. Per unit mass. That is, a lot of energy should be able to be generated from that source of energy per unit of its mass. So in that way, we say that the energy source is a good source of energy, a good source of energy. So wood fuel, for example, is a good source of energy in that it takes that cheapness and ready availability. For example, in rural communities, they often use this to what? To cook rural areas. Okay, so that is one of the characteristics. Then, now what is the major disadvantage of this? This one leads to deforestation, okay? Deforestation, because the moment they exhaust dried wood, what do? They cut down fresh food and, dry them and use them for cooking. So it leads to deforestation and reduction in biodiversity of plants, okay? Reduction in biodiversity of plants. So what else do we need to talk about? Now, let's talk about the non-conventional energy sources. The non-conventional energy sources. So let me just quickly talk about the non-conventional energy sources. Now, the non-conventional energy sources are just the sources that are more recent and they are renewable. There are more recent energy sources that have just been found out and they are very, very renewable. Okay. Now, one of those sources is solar energy. Is solar energy. So, for example, as a way of, I mentioned hydropower energy. Now, hydropower energy is actually not non-renewable. Hydropower energy is renewable, okay? But the problem is that, no, not problem. The reason why it's classified as conventional is that it has been around for a long time. It has been around for a long time. It has been around for a long time. And so what I'm saying is that not all conventional energy sources are non-renewable, but hydropower, so for example, hydropower is conventional, but it is renewable, okay? But most non-conventional sources are renewable, all right? So solar energy, for example, solar energy generation, it is used for electricity, generation of electricity, okay? And it's, in fact, generating you what? Clean electricity. But here's the problem with it. So here's the problem with it. It has ab initio or initial high cost of production, high cost of setup. Okay, so that is the major disadvantage with solar energy. Okay, now another one is the nuclear energy. Yeah, let's talk about the nuclear energy. Nuclear energy. So nuclear energy, for example, is just what the energy we get from bombarding a uranium, okay, or splitting uranium rather, or thorium atom, okay. So by the time we do that, then their nucleus splits and then we're able to generate energy. And the major problem with it is that scientists are still battling with the waste, the how to discharge its waste or how to manage its waste. Okay, the waste gotten from nuclear energy, but it's a very huge source of energy. In fact, massive amount of energy is generated from nuclear energy. Okay, so another one that we might want to talk about is the wind energy. The wind energy. Let me list the ones I remember. We have the wind, we have the biomass energy. So this one is going to be from what? From plant and animal origin. Then we have the geothermal energy. Okay, so geothermal energy, that is energy from the heat inside the earth. Okay, we also have tidal energy that uses the level of water in the sea. Okay, so that's tidal energy. We also have tidal energy. All right, so wind energy is going to go from where? From the wind. So that is strong wind. Okay. Now that is so the advantage with this one is that it requires open space, right? That has strong wind, and if there's no such place, you can't use it. Then biomass energy. Biomass energy uses plants and animal origin. Okay. Now what that means is that we also have to deplete some organisms in a way in order to be able to create it. So for example, there are some algae from which algae deposits actually are mixed with other things to create methane gas, for example, methane gas, which is a major fuel. So you can imagine, when an algae is able to do that, they will also deplete the population of such algae. Does that make sense? Right. Then geothermal energy, that's the energy from the inside of the earth. So it means that the place where this energy can be generated is limited to places that have hot springs. Do you understand? Places that have volcanic volcanoes or something like that, okay? Because volcano, I mean, not something like that, okay? So, because that's geothermal energy. So that's the problem with it. And of course, volcanic eruptions lead to loss of things, loss of lives, loss of properties, loss of things, loss of organisms too. Okay, so that's another disadvantage of geothermal energy, but it's also a high amount of energy. And tidal energy, energy that uses the level of the sea, the level of the so if the tidal level is high, then there is high possibility of current. Okay, so because of that, it's able to drive whatever is inside the water to work. So that thing uses the energy of that tide to work. So those are that is going to be on conventional and non-conventional energy. I'm very sorry. Those of you that are already expecting video on alkynes, um, I'm supposed to have posted the video, but you can imagine shooting a video for 2 hours and your mic stopped working. You can imagine. So some of these gadgets are not so reliable. So that's why I did not post it. You can imagine a video that is not for 2 hours. You'll be talking and nothing will be heard. So, but I'm going to remake it probably this weekend so that I can post it. But of course, then for the biochemistry series also, I got discouraged during that time too because of those things, the messing up of the gadgets. But do well to subscribe to the channel. God bless you.